Greetings, fellow humans. I am Hugh.
And I am Man.
And together we are definitely not
Two
kobolds in a trench coat. We enjoy human activities, such as paying taxes,
having existential crises,
and RPG horror stories. Let's see what we've got today.
Players stopped me during the final session of our campaign to yell at me. By Reddit user FormarLane3019. I was a first-time GM when I was doing this session, and it was the last session of a campaign we had been doing for about 6 months. I had reinforced to them that the goal was to rescue the king and to help him escape from the god's domain, and that the god wouldn't have been beatable since he was the god of death. I admit that this is probably something I did wrong, but I thought with my constant reminders of it that they would have remembered that the objective was, and their purpose was not to kill the god, but to rescue the king.
Okay, first point of order here is, how was the GM informing them? Was he just telling them as the GM? Was he providing them information with NPCs, the quest giver? Was the lore around this god established and built up over the course of the campaign if they had been running for about 6 months? It feels to me there's some information missing, but let's see where this goes.
To my surprise, they didn't go and try and rescue the king, but tried to fight and kill the god. It was only when I reminded them that the king was there that they realized what they were supposed to be doing. They then turned around and started yelling at me about the game mechanics and objectives and how I didn't make anything clear to them and was vague. The lecturing went on for about 15 minutes before they finally continued with the session, and most of them were being passive-aggressive for the remainder of the session.
Okay, so first of all, why is the party lecturing about mechanics here? That's my big question. If the GM if this is only about the objectives and what's going on, why are mechanics being involved? Second of all, any good GM needs to be prepared for this possibility that the party will go off script and make an attempt to kill the BBEG. They will attempt to do something completely left field. As a GM, this should have been prepared for and potentially been able to be headed off very early on. It's quite common for a party as well to test if a BBEG is actually unkillable.
Or any member or enemy for that matter.
Exactly, is the GM saying it is unkillable for the sake of building up its strength and intimidation, or have they genuinely made it immortal and invulnerable and actually unkillable? Has the party been told it's just really strong just to make them feel more heroic when they defeat it? I'd really like to hear more about what exactly has gone on here off script and what methods the GM has used to reinforce this, because this information is incredibly vague.
It is. I actually see a lot of comments of people being like, I want to hear the other side of the story. Moving on. I know I'm not blameless in this and that I did some things wrong, but at the same time, stopping the GM in the middle of the session to yell at them about their GMing style and something that they spent hours planning isn't exactly the best thing either. This isn't the only time they've done this. As in the second campaign I tried to run for them, they stopped during the first session to yell at me twice about unbeatable enemies, when the enemies were beatable. There was just storytelling that needed to happen that would set up the rest of the campaign. It's safe to say that I won't be playing with them again.
Okay, in the GM's defense, it is never acceptable to yell at your GM.
No.
If you feel your GM is being unfair or hasn't necessarily understood a lot of the rules, have a polite word with them. And maybe even do that after the session in private so that you're not all potentially ganging up on them and humiliating the GM in front of the rest of the party.
Especially if it's their first time, which this GM said that it was their first time.
Yeah, the party should have definitely taken a gentler hand with the GM. On the other hand of that, it is also possible that the party had unreasonable expectations as to what a campaign could be. They might have been expecting to be all-powerful heroes, blitzing their way through hordes of enemies like a video game. and that's not what D&D is. However, this second time of unbeatable enemies being a thing, and what the OP says about there being storytelling that needed to happen, made me think that maybe he had given some of his enemies and NPCs some plot armor, so they weren't going down when they should have gone down.
Well, sometimes GMs or DMs will put in enemies that are not meant to be beat at that time, only for you to go back. And that is a storytelling thing. But that doesn't mean that they wasn't really way too difficult for them, or they weren't being clear about what the situation was.
Absolutely. However, if the intention is not for the characters to beat the enemy at that point, the GM needs to be prepared for the fact that they will, and not potentially make it unkillable. You can make an enemy really strong with the intention that the enemy will leave the party, that they will give them a beating and then flee. But if the party is able to overcome the enemy, you as a GM need to be able to accept that and readjust your plans accordingly.
Can I also just add, who does a session or a campaign, for that matter, for like 6 months, and then you get to the last session and you have this obvious BBEG that you're not meant to fight and kill and defeat? That, I mean, maybe I don't know the mechanics of the whole thing.
Yeah, that's the point. If this is the final session, players generally expect to be able to beat one big final enemy, and to simply say your objective is to get in and out is more a quest along the way, rather than the final one. So, here's the thing. OP can probably readjust his expectations and potentially do better narrative and storytelling and setting up, and be prepared for the possibility of when the players decide to be as unherdable as cats, which is an inevitability in any RPG game. On the other hand, the party has definitely got to be a bit gentler with the GM, especially if they're first time, and maybe reevaluate some of their expectations and definitely reevaluate how they interact with their GM.
Yeah, it's better to have helpful feedback rather than just yelling at your GM, especially if it's their first time.
This story is by Chris Alex 4. Am I the a-hole for eating 2 bandits, committing a war crime with strawberry jam and profiting off it?
Okay, this is... What? What?
Let's find out. My party decided to raid a bandit camp that's been terrorising the nearby village. My character, half-orc male 21, was severely injured. The DM said that if I roll a nat 20, I can eat the bandits and restore my health.
Wait, you can eat enemies? You can cannibalize enemies to restore health?
I wouldn't say you could do it to restore health as a game mechanic, but this DM was clearly feeling a bit saucy.
Yeah, that's... Okay. This is already kind of weird.
I rolled a 20. I was back to 15 HP. In the camp, we found 5 jars of strawberry jam. So to celebrate, I made everyone jam sandwiches. Everyone except our druid and my barbarian ate them. It turned out they were poisoned.
Of course.
Our party entered a tavern to ask for help. The owner said that there's a necromancer nearby and he could help us.
Wait, there's a necromancer that can help with healing? I'm really interested what this game is.
I mean, I'm sure it was going somewhere.
Also, jam in a bandit camp, that kind of sounds like a trap. Not gonna lie.
Bandits need to have sandwiches too.
That's true. You know, you're right. I never really think about that. They're just bandits.
Exactly. They're people too. They like their jam sandwiches.
They like their PB&J. Okay.
Mm-hmm. But the necromancer wanted 5 souls for giving us the antidote. We went back to the tavern and I asked the owner if he had any enemies. He said the nearby bar is stealing his clients. I entered the bar, sold 4 remaining jars of jam. They gave me 12 gold. Then we waited for the effects of the poison to kick in.
Oh no.
We gathered 20 souls. The party then rushed to the necromancer while I collected my payment for shutting down the competition. The friendly tavern owner gave me 3 gold. When my party visited the necromancer, he looked at us in disgust, cured the barely alive poison heroes, and gave us a place to sleep for another 5 souls. So, am I the a-hole?
So I got questions. Why is the necromancer being so judgy? You asked for 5 souls, they gave you 20.
I mean, even necromancers must have their limits.
I guess it was a necromancer with morals.
I mean, killing a bunch of bandits and criminals for their souls is one thing. To literally go and kill a bar and most of its patrons for being in competition with another tavern is not even close to being morally dubious. It is just pure and simple mafia style.
Oh, for sure. It is. Although, to be fair, they weren't doing it just to shut down the competition. They were doing it to get the souls to pay for healing.
No, but the target was chosen purely on the basis of a business rivalry, and that is definitely morally questionable.
Also, they only got 3 gold for it from the tavern owner. They committed war crimes and got, they didn't profit off of it amazingly. That's my point. You didn't even profit that much off of it.
No, they effectively got a night's stay in that tavern for killing 20 people, and that to me is just a very poor rate for any assassin.
That just seems like, modern day employee-employer relationships.
The moral of the story then simply is, if you're gonna commit war crimes, make sure you're well paid for them.
Exactly. At least you'll be comfortable. Hey, Hugh.
What?
What did the wanted poster for the escaped halfling divination wizard say?
I don't know, man. What did it say?
Small, medium, at large.
And with that, we have definitely not been
Two kobolds in a trench coat.
Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and make the necessary sacrifices to Tiamat. We'll see you next time.